Okay, we are going to do a very, very brief introduction of some quadratic word problems. Okay, so the first one, we have a company's yearly profits from 1996 to 2006 can be modeled by the function y equals x squared minus 8x plus 80, where y is the profit in thousands of dollars and x is the number of years since 1996. And it says, in what year did the company experience its lowest yearly profit? So you have to remember this equation, x squared minus 8x plus 80, because of the positive a value out here, we know it would look something like that. Okay. And if it's talking about the lowest yearly profit, that must be referring to that point right there. So the lowest profit is really talking about the minimum of this parabola. And the minimum of the parabola is really just the y coordinate of the vertex. And if it's asking for the year in which that happens, okay, x is the number of years since 1996, okay, that's really going to be talking about the x coordinate of that vertex. And if we have this equation in standard form, okay, what we really need to start by doing is finding that axis of symmetry. And that is that little formula of x equals negative b over 2a. So negative b would be negative 8 or just positive 8. 2a, the a value here is that invisible 1. So that would be 2 times 1 or just 2, which means our axis of symmetry is just x equals 4. So that means that that minimum value, that lowest profit, is going to happen 4 years since 1996. It's not just year 4. That wouldn't make sense, okay, because x is the number of years since 1996. So 4 years since then means it happened in 2000. And now when they're asking what is the lowest yearly profit, we're just going to take that answer that we got for the x coordinate and plug it into the equation and figure out what the y value is. So our equation is going to look like 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 80. And if we evaluate that, we get 16 minus 32 plus 80, which should end up being 64. And because it's in thousands of dollars, that means that the lowest yearly profit was $64,000. Okay, and our next one involves projectile motion. Okay, when we're throwing a ball or kicking a ball, anything with a ball being up in the air. Okay, so we have a lacrosse ball thrown from 8 feet above the ground with an initial vertical velocity of 35 feet per second. Part A says to write that equation using the vertical motion model. Okay, I put some version of the vertical motion model here for us to use. I think we actually used like a V sub 0 and an H sub 0. Okay, you'll see different versions of the same thing. Okay, but essentially the initial velocity goes in the middle term with the t, and the constant at the end is that starting height. So our equation is going to be h of t equals negative 16t squared. That doesn't change. It was a 35 feet per second, so that's going to be plus 35t. And then the height was 8, so plus 8. So now the true question says, if no one catches the ball, how long will the ball be in the air? So if we think about this, I'm going to draw a really rough graph right here. Okay, the ball's thrown from 8 feet. It's going up, up, up in the air, and then it's going to come land down somewhere over here. In our vertical motion model, our x-axis is really t for time, and that y-axis is really our height. Okay, so this graph is showing it's starting from a height, going up in the air, and it's coming down. Okay, so if the ball is in the air, that's, this section of the graph over here, that must be saying that the height is some positive number. It's going to change. It's going to go up a little bit. It's going to go down, but it's a positive number. When the ball is no longer in the air, okay, is going to be at that point right here, which is the x-intercept. It means that the height has become 0. Okay, so it's really asking us to set this equation equal to 0 and solve, because that's going to tell you at what time that happened. So we have 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 35t plus 8. And it's not going to be the prettiest, but it appears that quadratic formula is probably going to be the most useful here. So once again, quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so we're going to start this with our numbers. So, oops, sorry. We have x equals negative b, be negative 35, plus or minus giant square root symbol. B is 35, so b squared, I happen to know, is 1225. Okay, and then minus, and this part I don't know off the top of my head, so we'll just write it out as 4 times negative 16 is our a value, and our c value is 8. And then that's going to be all over 2a, which is 2 times negative 16, or negative 32. Now I'm going to kind of simplify that up a little bit. I'm going to use my calculator and do 4 times 16 times 8. And so we get x equals negative 35 plus or minus the square root. Actually, I'm going to scratch that. I'm going to use a better calculator and not just my iPhone one, and actually just do 1225 minus 4 times negative 16 times 8. And that should give us 1737 there. My square root symbol is a little bit too large now, but it doesn't want to erase, so oh well. And that is going to be over negative 32. Okay, and now the last thing is to kind of just figure out what this is. And remember, when you're using that calculator, we want to make sure we're telling it to do the top part first. So as you're typing it in, you're going to make sure, why is my computer not writing anymore? We're making sure we're throwing this stuff in parentheses before we divide by that negative 32. So negative 35 plus root 1737. Make sure you get out of the root before closing your parentheses. Divide it by negative 32. And that actually gives us negative 0.21-ish. I'm going to do the same thing again, but switch that plus to a minus instead. And we get about, we'll say 2.4-ish. Okay. Now keep in mind, there was this other part of the parabola that was over here, but that would be negative time. We don't want that one. Okay, so we don't actually care about this answer. Okay, this is our answer. It's going to be in the air for about 2.4 seconds. Okay, so anytime it talks about hitting the ground, okay, or not being in the air anymore, we are finding the x-intercepts of the graph. We're setting the equation equal to 0 and solving it in some way. Anytime we are talking about a maximum or a minimum value, we're dealing with that vertex of that equation.